You're listening to the Reversing Climate Change podcast by the team at Nori, the carbon removal marketplace. This is a show about the innovators and entrepreneurs developing solutions to climate change.
Hello and welcome to the Reversing Climate Change podcast. I'm Ross Kenyon. I'm the creative editor at Nori's carbon removal marketplace. Today I have with me co-hosting Radhika Mulgavkar. Radhika, you are the head of methodology at Nori. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
I know you're extra happy too, because you've been eating our guest food for a very long time, and I for a less amount of time, but still, a Seattle favorite. Chef Renee Erickson, James Beard Award winner, chef and co-owner of Sea Creatures Restaurants, and author of her latest cookbook, Getaway. Welcome to the show, Renee.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I was telling Ross before the show got started that you're one of my seminal food moments in Seattle. My husband and I went on one of our earliest dates at the original Boat Street Cafe, and we had the chicken you mentioned in this cookbook, and I still remember it. And it was right around the corner from North Lake Tavern, and such good memories. And I am so excited to meet you. And he's very jealous that he doesn't get to meet you.
I love it. Get the recipe for the chicken now, so that's good, right?
Yeah, that's great. Though we can't recreate it the way you do, but it's a real treat to meet you. So thanks for being on the show.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Renee, what inspired you to write this particular cookbook? And right now, I imagine this took you longer than COVID, but it's so focused on travel and your favorite places that it probably hit that wanderlust that everyone's been missing from their lives.
Oh man, it's been 3 years in the making. The last year was all kind of technical stuff and editing. And so now the intention of the book originally was much smaller. It was supposed to be a little book. That's what my agent told me when I was proposing it to her. She's like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. It won't be a big deal. It'll be easy. And I should have known better. But it is a book that started from the idea of aperitivi or apero hour, and trying to have foods that are, easy to put together, stuff that you can buy, stuff that's in your pantry, a lot of things that you share with friends. And then it grew a lot. And so when I started thinking about that time of day in regards to food and what I loved about it, it made me start to think about how I started in food, which wasn't really in food. I was an art student at the University of Washington, and ended up living in Rome at the Palazzo Pio, going to school in Palazzo Pio. And I lived about a 10-minute walk away. And so I would walk every day through Rome to this fabulous place near Campo dei Fiori, and was just, I was 20, I think, and never had understood that food was something that was not only for nourishment, but total pleasure, and the entire day was planned around it. And that was, not a very, at least my upbringing, we ate really well. We had a garden. We, there was obviously celebrations and things, but it wasn't quite as compulsive as Italy, at least in Rome, was. And so I thought it was fantastic and was very curious, and spent a lot of time in shops and trying to understand all the different things that I didn't know about. And then fast forwarding, kind of looking through my life as a cook, it became really clear to me that those kind of experiences have really driven the way I think about food and how I've learned about food in travel. And as being someone who was, really fortunate to get to go to school in Rome, and then having a restaurant at a really young age gave me kind of a weird opportunity to not have a lot of things. I mean, I had a business, but I also didn't know the rules of owning a business. So I would close for 2 weeks and go to France and try to learn something. It was just, I was young and stupid, and I just loved food. And so all of a sudden, I've got, many places over the years that have become really important to me. And have family friends now that, or people that are friends that I feel like are my family in these places. And that became kind of the idea around the book, where it was this extension of my first book. And that the first book was really focused on the people here in Seattle that have been really important to me as a chef. And this kind of was the next ring out of all these places that have been, have taught me so much. So yeah, it was supposed to be small. It's not small. It's a giant book now. It's actually funny. I was signing my first book today. It makes me so happy because I love it so much, and especially having spent so much time on Getaway now, that to go back and look at it and feel oh, look at that. It has the same kind of it's me, which is what feels really nice, especially to have it bound up in a thing where people can like read it and learn from it and, experience some part of it. I think cookbooks have always been my favorite way. If I can't get on a plane, like it's what I do is read cookbooks and read about people's lives because I'm just so fascinated by it. That was a very long answer. Sorry.
No, it's such a beautiful cookbook. Both Ross and I commented on it. You can kind of see your artistic background in it.
I love the blue edges of the pages too.
Right. Yeah, they're fantastic. What a nice detail. And I will say you did a great job because one of my questions was like, this whole book is about these wonderful food memories you have of friends and family. It comes through so wonderfully in the book. And I was curious about what's your earliest memory of food and place. I saw you the clamming picture with your parents and I thought maybe that's what it was, but curious.
It's, I would say there's two that are the most vivid of being a kid is being in a garden. So we had about 2 acres and my dad was a landscaper. So most of that was like trees that he was growing and things like that. But we always had a small garden. And I remember one of my chores was to weed the garden. And I think it was probably short-sighted on my mom's part to have me do that because I would sit and eat everything. So I would eat my way down the strawberry patch or I'd eat, all the peas or something. So there's that, which, that kind of eating is like unbelievable to be able to have something just pulled out of a garden. And then, very similarly, but from the water, having the time that we would spend up at the Tilley Lip Preservation, we had these amazing experiences with being on the water and like learning how to fish and catching crab. And, there was I don't even know if this man's alive anymore, but this guy would come and honk his horn on his boat and he would pull up on the beach and he had gone shrimping and he would have a little like steamer on his boat and he would steam all these shrimp and then they'd be sold to us warm in paper bags. And we would sit on this, on a log basically and eat shrimp and throw the shells in the back in the water and like that kind of stuff. Like, I know it exists, but not in my world anymore, at least not in the modern world of Seattle. Like that's not, it's probably legal. So I don't think you can't shrimp whenever you want anymore, which is good. Speaking of what we're talking about today. But so it's all like, it's that kind of like really close to the source food that I think is such a, such a huge problem in our world with food. So like trying to, recreate or have people have access to something that's like full of life still is such a luxury and such a beautiful thing to get to experience. I think more and more, I wish it was, it's one of the things I love about restaurants is trying to have relationships with farmers so that we get things, as immediate as we can from being pulled out of the ground or the, oyster farm or whatever. So
I think I originally pulled this insight from David Chang. He has some line about how like New York high cuisine is very much focused on transforming ingredients because the quality of the ingredients is lesser. I don't know if this is still true. Maybe this is 20 years out of date. I don't know. But, and then the West Coast is famous for Alice Waters, right? It's a carrot on a plate. That's what it is. Your food strikes me. I know this word is overused with cooking. It's not haunting. Whenever someone describes a flavor as haunting, I die a little inside. I'm sick of that one. But like your food does seem rustic and ingredient forward. I wish I had a better vocabulary than that, but is that halfway fair?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I think there's like lanes of food. I think that, chefs in particular choose to live in, and mine is try to get out of the way of whatever it is and try to buy the best version of it. And not that it needs to be expensive, but that it should be like, picked at the right time and seasonal. And yeah, I mean, I'm not a trained chef either. And so my like love of food and cooking came from eating more so than like thinking about creating something in that way. I could watch a grandma anywhere in the world cook all day long and I'd be so thrilled, far more interesting than Food Network shows or, like anything, any cool, what do you call it? I don't even know what they're called. Tools. Things that you make stuff look fancier with. I don't know. I'm way more interested in that than trying to recreate something that's already pretty perfect. I mean, I want to cook it sometimes, but yeah.
it makes it more accessible to people like Radhika and I, who I'm enthusiastic. I don't know how skilled I am, but I am enthusiastic. I think if you had something that involved tweezers or like a little bit more chefy, I think I would die in the making of these. What'd you cook out of this, Radhika? Do you know?
Oh my gosh. We cooked a ton of the toasts. So I'm a big fan of the toasts. It appears that you might be too. Yeah, you might be too, Renee. I mean, I just did the buckwheat flour crepes with leeks, and on Monday, what an amazing flavor combination that never occurred to me. We did almost the whole Roman section. We did Baja. Yeah, so we did a ton of it. Our kids tend towards the Baja flavors more, so that was probably the most successful family-wise. But those crepes yesterday or Monday were awesome.
Yeah. I mean, like that's a really good contrast, Normandy to Baja, and I think oftentimes that's been the curious question for everyone is like, how did those two end up together? And for me, I think the ingredient part of a place, like when you travel somewhere and there's something so familiar and also so not familiar, and then to see how they've created things and, things have become tradition, clearly, especially with buckwheat and Normandy, is so, I don't know. I just love it. Like it's the best part, it's the best part of travel to me is learning those sort of things become really normal in a place that are totally new to me. So yeah, a buckwheat crepe with, cheeses and hams and apples or whatever you put in it is so traditional and, nothing I would have grown up with, so even though we have all those things here. So
yeah, that's what I actually loved the most about that crepe, at least for me, was a combination of the cosmic crisp apple and so a little Washington thrown in with a little France.
Yeah,
so,
I love that too. That's fun.
Yeah, I like combining traditions in interesting ways. But anyway, Ross, what did you cook? We didn't hear your list.
I cooked a bunch too. I mean, the crostini was a big hit. I liked those, especially the ricotta and roasted cherry tomato crostini with too much olive oil. I liked it. I also liked many of these required strange ingredients that I had never heard of, like pipara peppers. Is that what they are? I was like, where the hell do I find pipara peppers? I went to a bunch of stores and I sounded cool, but I didn't find them. I had to order online.
We've been buying those for a long time. A friend of mine is from Spain, and he had he imported all of these ingredients, and so we were snacking on those many years ago, even at the early Boat Street days. Which is they're fun too because they're not hot. They're just like super green and intense flavored, vegetal, not spicy. So yeah.
It was a good use of brininess and acid. Another case of that too was I made these slow braised shallots with cider and using the cider in that way too. Yeah. Did you make those, Radhika?
I did not get around to making those. I mean, as Renee pointed out, it's a very big cookbook, so it's on my list. Don't we worry. I love shallots, so I'm excited to make those.
I bought all the shallots at the store when I went. The guy's like, you want 3 pounds of shallots? I was like, yeah.
I guess what she said.
That's the mantra in the house right now, Renee. What Renee says, we do. So we don't mess with your recipes at all.
You can. Don't feel obliged to follow them verbatim. They're intended as guides more than anything. So you could have got half the shallots.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind for next time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so listeners might be puzzled because we haven't brought up climate change quite yet. And maybe they can discern some links to this from how we're talking about this. Seems like there's some natural links here to trying to eat locally, trying to eat seasonally. Is that still a paradigm that people concerned with the environment and its links with food should care about? Is that a good way to think about it? Is that too big of a question for you?
Yeah. It's absolutely something I think more people should be thinking about. I still don't think it's that. I mean, I've been in many grocery stores all over America, and it's kind of frightening. It's just like whatever all the time, no matter what, we have it. And, like our idea around food is so, I don't know. It's like, it's just that. It's just like, you want to have it. Okay, I'm going to go get it because I can. I don't eat tomatoes unless they're canned tomatoes that I've canned until late July in Washington, because they're terrible. For one, they taste like crap. They're expensive, and I don't need them, because they're not good. And so I think I wish people would kind of consider that more when they're thinking about food and what is actually good versus what they just assume is good because it's available.
An example too that you've institutionalized is how Bateau treats beef.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that although I think we've done a pretty good job of being mindful, or at least considering a lot of that, I think, that is still something that I'm wrestling with. I know that we're buying a whole cow usually, or always, and utilizing everything, which is really hard to do. It takes a ton of effort and planning and creativity around cooking. And then it also takes a lot of willing customers to experiment on things that aren't necessarily what maybe they don't want to have when they go out for a steak. But, it's the reality of how food used to be. And I think I wish it was, because we're really wasteful in wanting, like the prime cut and not having to think about like why we eat too much meat. Like there's so many like issues around that, I think, in regards to like, is it okay to eat beef? Like that's a huge conversation now, obviously, with all the pollution that causes. And then, how would we get away from that? And so, I struggle with that still, where I'm just like, well, maybe we shouldn't do it at all. I'm hopeful that, there's some place in the world that we can get to where responsibly purchasing, a whole animal in a way by a farmer who's, farming it responsibly without creating a lot of carbon emissions for that would be great. I mean, I don't want to give it up, but, we're constantly like kind of looking at what we're doing and how we can be better. I think we don't feel satisfied, I guess, is what I'm saying, with the way restaurants function and the way we function within them too. I think, we have a lot of learning and effort to be made still. So I don't know. It's a lot to unpack for sure.
You're not going to go vegan like Daniel Hum?
I am grateful that he's doing that. I think it's pretty bold. I mean, it's very bold. I think it helps to be a restaurant that has a history of more, I don't know if molecular is the right word, but like kind of farther away from like the whole piece of fish or whatever, like it's more kind of like food that evolves more before it hits the plate. But yeah, I mean, it's all part of, I think, a conversation that we all have to be willing to talk about. We can't just like keep our head in the sand and think that like, well, it's just my one restaurant. How big of an impact is it? It's a lot. By doing it, we're basically saying it's okay for one. And so I don't know, like I'm definitely like, I talk about never buying salmon again, with my chefs. Like we don't buy any king salmon, and that's good. I don't know that it makes any difference, but
not even like Bristol Bay, where I think it's okay up there.
We do buy Bristol Bay, but so we don't buy. So like when you think of buying local, like we would want to buy fish from Washington, which we don't buy any salmon from Washington right now. We have in the past. There's like right now, all there is the spring Chinook, which I won't buy because that's like if there is a big fish that the orca whales will survive on, it's that one, which isn't, those runs are terrible. If you read the like Washington Fish and Game page, like everything is bad on the salmon runs. And so yeah, so we're trying, like Bristol Bay, we're trying to support. We buy a lot of frozen fish and use that because I think it's a way to support fisheries, in a way that like allows the fish to actually be better than a lot of the fish that people are buying, which is unfortunate. I think people think that fresh salmon's better, but it's not always. I think often it's not. I mean, even in Seattle, like the fish that gets in Seattle is still sometimes 2 weeks old. So, if it's sitting at the bottom of a tender, they wait to fill it up with fish. It's iced, but it's still, sitting there. And then eventually it makes it to the cannery, and then it gets put on a box and flown to SeaTac or wherever. And then eventually in a warehouse, and then eventually in my restaurant. And we just bought some Copper River sockeye we buy from Drifters, which is a husband and wife team that fish the river there. And then we'll buy stuff from Bristol. But yeah, I mean, it's never ending. Like, I feel like there's one, it feels like whack-a-mole where, you're like, okay, we're going to not do this now. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, shit, now I'm buying this. Like, is that okay? So I don't know. I mean, I think the hard part as a consumer is no one has time really to like spend unpacking like the grocery store of items. You hope that people are doing a good job, but they're not. There's no real way to know what's good, unless you do the research, which is really exhausting. So
yeah, your previous cookbook though is ordered in terms of seasons, right? A boat, a whale, and a walrus. And I also read 6 Seasons recently. I cook out of that one at Paramount too. And I find that to be it's easy to be environmentally friendly. You're not shipping stuff across the ocean when it's delicious, and something that is fresh picked and actually not traveling super far. It isn't a sacrifice. In fact, it's often better.
Yeah.
Easy sell.
Yeah. I think the challenge is cost. I think people have gotten to a place where food is supposed to be cheap, and it really isn't. For it to be grown well, and the people that are growing it are living lives that are healthy, and they can feed their family and go to the doctor or go on vacation, God forbid, do all the things that we all want to do. Most of the food in the world isn't that. It isn't farmed by people that are respected and given lives that are healthy and happy. So I think until we really recognize that and become a culture that isn't okay with that, then I think it's going to be, it becomes like a luxury thing, and it shouldn't be. We should be able to have good food that's nutritious and locally grown, and not, I think we should be able to have like people making enough money so that they can buy the foods that are from that place, whether it's the farmer's market or whatever, rather than having to buy at a mini market. Or that part of it really makes me the most mad, that our government and our society has kind of perpetuated the idea of cheap food, and that it's okay to have cheap food over nutritious, food that's local.
No, in your like substantial food empire in Seattle, is there any place that has a sort of working class availability? Is that just impossible to do as an individual or as an entrepreneur? Is this something that needs to happen at a policy level? Is it impossible for you, even if you wanted to
make like less expensive food? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or have like an old like canteen kind of approach or something.
I think it's two things, right? I don't know that like fine dining or restaurants, I don't think that's our job, really. I think it's more that like we need to have, I don't think that the only good food should be expensive food, and so, but I think there are places that are doing, like there's an organization in Seattle called Green Plate Special that's like a 2 acre, I think it's 2 lot, not 2, I wish it was 2 acre, but it's a farm that teaches kids how to raise vegetables and cook with them, and they sell their food, which I love. And I think we just need people, it's not unlike the schoolyard project, where there's food that can be grown that's nutritious and good and fresh and seasonal, that doesn't have to be crazy expensive. I think I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm sure I could do that. I just don't know that I have the bandwidth to start a canteen, but I think we do a lot of other like fundraising things and that sort of stuff that does promote that sort of thing, like including with Green Plate Special. But yeah, I don't know. It's a great idea. And, that's not true. I think that, like Mel at Musang here in Seattle, she's been doing a lot like the community kitchen stuff during the pandemic that has been feeding people, her community, which is awesome. I don't know. Yeah. It's all part of like trying to come to a place where like if we have to like flip everything upside down and try to look at food in a new way.
Don't mean to put you too much on the spot there. Just a question of like, is it structural
like, or project mostly? I'm like so tired. The book kind of the book project was great, but then to have it come out while we're trying to like dig out of a pandemic has been a bit challenging, but it's also really fun to think about travel and people that I haven't seen for a long time. So
yeah, I was going to ask you, what's the first place you're going to visit now that the world is reopening?
Right. We're going to Baja actually in a few weeks. My friends, Dano and Carla, who are featured in the book, we're going to do a dinner down there. So we're going to, he has been, really Baja. That part of Baja is pretty undeveloped, which I love. There's, it's, surf towns and farms really, which is pretty spectacular. And so we're going to do a dinner for 30 people at his surf shack on the beach. So,
I want to know how I get on that invitation list. Like, can you make 31? I'm just kidding.
There are seats available still. So it's June 14th. Yeah, Monday, June 14th. You just have to get to Cerritos Beach in Baja and we'll feed you. Yeah, his uncle has he harvests sea snails. So we're going to make some sea snails, and then blood clams are a big deal down there. So the big clams, so there's the recipe in the book. So we're going to do those with the salsa macha. I think what's fun is I send pictures to Dano all the time. I'm like, what about this? And so lately it's been grilled watermelon with grilled big prawns from Baja with like charred serrano chilies, and going back and forth. And I'm going to get there, and the day before we'll basically go to the farm and see what's available and harvest tomatoes, hopefully, is what I'm dreaming of, because it's not a bad time to eat tomatoes in Mexico. And then the fishermen will bring what they have. So I love that. I don't want to overplan, because then I'm going to miss out on something that just happens to show up, which I think would be nice if that was more how we, lived our lives a little bit. I know it's like decadent to think of it that way, but that was, I think, originally what made it so inspiring about being in Rome, was the idea that, people walk by, and if they didn't have artichokes, they would buy fennel, whatever was there, versus like forcing this situation to happen that then requires someone to be farming it out of season and making it so that whenever your artichoke whim happens, you get them.
I mean, the way you describe it sounds absolutely dreamy. I do wish we could have a life like that. I don't know how you unwind the rest of life, right? It's just so complex, but
I know. And I feel like it definitely got worse this year. It didn't get easier at all.
Nope.
I don't know. I mean, I think it might be that, I think the to-go food situation, back to kind of having things that are maybe less expensive, is a way to do that, because it doesn't require the infrastructure of staff, like service staff and, all of that. But yeah, I don't know. Meal kits, I like that too, but I'm watching a crow across the street eat something. What do you have? Urban living. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew the answer. I know it is, it might not be possible, but I do hope for that, where people can, I don't know, just work less, for God's sakes, too. Where like food and being with people doesn't have to just be Sunday, because it's so important. I think we all just get kind of spun out on, especially now with email. I was like, well, this is a good example. Like my book, the first book came out before Instagram, or at least before I was on Instagram. Turns out it was so much easier to launch a book without Instagram. It's just like one less thing to do. Although like you have all these great connections because of it, but oh my God, like, every day you're like, what do I have to do on Instagram? Blah, blah, blah. And you just start to feel like a robot.
That like meal kit thing, now that the pandemic is at least more manageable with people getting vaccinated, I want glamour. I want to go out and dress up. I like Canlis, of course, in Seattle, is like the meal kits and all of their like pickleball and stuff. It's like, this is pretty fun. I like that y'all are rolling with the punches so hard, but also I don't want anything like that. Now I want a restaurant to be a restaurant again. I want to come into the Walrus and the Carpenter, and I want to eat oysters at happy hour. And I don't want you to give me oysters to go or something. I'd be like, that's not what I'm here for.
I mean, that makes me happy, because I think, restaurants in the last 10 years have become such a huge part of our lives, which was never, certainly even 25 years ago, it wasn't the case, or even 15, really. Like it's exploded, and that people are, at least in Seattle, much more social in that way, which I really love. I think it's become such an important part of people's week. But yeah, I think I'm excited about that. It's going to be an interesting summer to see how people behave and how wild everyone gets. And yeah, I'm excited. It's a little crazy, but.
I got to echo exactly what Ross was saying. I cannot wait. And we've tried, and the thing is, we've tried last week to go. We're just going to be spur of the moment and try to get reservations. And there was nothing available at all.
No. Well, we have half the tables, and everyone in the entire city wants to eat out every night now, which is great. So my tip is eat early or eat late. That's the Seattle crutch, is everyone. I have a friend who wants to name a restaurant 7:00 Big Red Wine, and which I think is hysterical, but so true. Like everyone wants to eat at 7:00, and most people want red wine, but. Yeah. So if you want to,
I will eat at 5:30 and drink some white wine just to get in.
Yeah.
Funny, because that was a trick somebody told me about Bateau. Go in early, then you get your choice of anything you want. And so we, on the board.
It's still the damn, we still are socially distanced, and so we have half the tables, and we're at 50% inside. Or I think, we're at 50%. So. Hopefully we'll see what happens in the next month if that disappears, which feels like so exciting and so bizarre to imagine, like a room full of people. I mean, I can't wait. Like it's one thing I miss the most is sitting at a bar and staring at a bartender and, the noise of a restaurant and just snooping and, like eavesdropping on what other people are doing and eating and, like just being around people you don't know. And yeah, I miss that a lot.
The Harvest Vine Bar was one of the best spots in Seattle, right? Like watching them cook, talking with them, and then listening to the conversations around. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so important, to just not have a plan too, like just kind of see what, like you're saying, like spur of the moment. It's a nice thing. Hopefully by summer that'll be easier because hopefully we'll have more tables. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, is your plan I'm glad y'all sea creatures survived seemingly. I guess I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but seems like you did okay. And
a lot of debt is what's happened.
A lot of debt. Okay. I didn't want to pry, but is your plan basically to just get your feet on the ground, try to get back to normal? Because I feel like there's so many tentacles in this.
We're bigger than we ought to be. We have 6 of the 10 restaurants open, trying to get, so with the PPP loans through the government, which is really the only thing that saved us, we have, we don't want more debt. So we have to be really diligent about making sure that we have staff here when the guests are here so that we can get it forgiven, which is, thankfully, that's not the math that I have to do. My business partner does that, but our goal is to be open all the way. We don't know. Like, it's hard to say like what it's going to be like. I'm happy that both of you are very excited about going out to eat. Part of me was like kind of starting to worry. I'm like, are people going to get so excited about cooking at home all the time that they're going to eat out less? Because people ate out a lot before the pandemic, which, was awesome because it was very different than like the go out for your anniversary kind of diner. But yeah, so we're going for it. We're going to open as much as we can back up. And we have leases and, loans and all, we have to open. We don't, I don't know what else to do. We're all tied to it personally. And, you kind of have to survive it. So, we've been really lucky to have staff that have endured it with us so that we can open back up. And summer is here, which is great. The vaccines, I think, couldn't have come at a better time. It's like unreal, really. It feels like such a huge emotional boost to feel like we can, be safe and hug people. My favorite new thing in the world to do is just hug anyone. It's so good. I'm like, wait, I'm not done. like the longer, the like hug that used to creep me out. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to keep hugging you for a minute. But yeah, so we're busy. We're going to open up. We opened up Pioneer Square General Purpose, which is, there's not a lot happening down there, but we have a really great neighbor that we want to support. And yeah, we're just trying to be around because the city is so, everything just moved out. So I think until people, it's not going to all happen at once. I think there's this idea that like we're going to take the boards down and things are going to be good again, but it's going to take a long time for enough people to show back up or build new businesses that go back into the places where there's been businesses that have shut down.
Well, I'm optimistic and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Seattle restaurant scene creates because it's been, like to your points earlier, what a fantastic last decade it's been here. So I'm really excited to see what new comes out. But I want to know what your favorite Seattle restaurant is that's not your own. So on a night where you might want to go out to a restaurant, where would you head out to?
Oh, man. I don't know that I have a favorite. I have a lot of favorites. I just ate at Cafe Lago last Saturday, and I hadn't eaten there in probably 2 years, which I sound like a customer, people that I like. I'm like, oh, thanks. But I love Carla and her food. And it was the first restaurant I ate at indoors. And I think, for me, like it was funny because it's, Italian, obviously. She's from Tuscany. And I wanted to go there, I think, mostly for nostalgic reasons. Like, it was a place that felt really, it was like a place that I went to when I was young, learning how to cook. And it's food that is, I knew exactly what, it's like we were talking about earlier, like I knew that I wanted her lasagna and her caponata. And yeah, it just like felt like home to me. And so that's a place that I love. I eat a lot of Italian food, it seems like. Delancey is not open, but I go there a lot. We walk there from my house. I love Delancey. Brandon worked with me for a long time. And same thing, it feels like you're in someone's kitchen, which I love. I think that's the part. I think also being in having my own restaurants, I like to go places where like I don't get food sent to me. I don't want to, I just want to like go in and eat food and feel normal and not think about work. And so if someone wants to talk to me about restaurants when I'm at their restaurant, it's hard because I just want to not think about it. And so Brandon and I have a pact where we don't talk about it when we're each in each other's restaurants so that we can just eat pizza and drink wine. I'm trying to think of where I just ate at Local Tide in Fremont. It's a sweet sandwich shop that has really beautiful, all local, sustainable seafood. He's doing a really great job. I think it's really fun. I think what I'm most excited about is when you're talking about like what's going to happen with the food scene is it's like there's going to be a lot of like 20 somethings that are going to open restaurants, and it's going to be awesome because they won't have, it'll be like me 25 years ago, but better because the food's better. People are more interested in eating. Kids, I call them kids. Young people are way more cultured than I certainly was at 20. I mean, like, it's amazing what, the food that they can create and are willing to experiment with. So that to me is the most exciting part about all of this is there's going to be a lot of food that is bold and personal, which I think is something that is missing in food in a lot of cases. I think people create food for what they think people want versus creating food for themselves. And I think there's definitely in the last year, particularly like a permission given to just be like, fuck it, I'm going to cook what I want to cook. And it's what my mom taught me, or it's, from where my family's from, or, I think can I swear? I just swore. Sorry. I'm like, damn.
I have to mark it as explicit now, but it's
I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, oh man. But yeah, like that, that's the kind of world that I'm excited about. There's a place not far from my house called Gracia, Mexican food that I really love. So the bagel craze, holy hell, there's bagels everywhere. And I was like, all right, I should probably have a bagel because I like grew up on like bagels in college, which I'm like, they're fine. But
are you talking about like Mountain Bagel? Is that what you're talking about?
I haven't had those, but yeah, like all of that where it's just so many bagels. But I went to, it's now called Rachel's Bagel, but it was Pork Chop & Co. in Ballard. So I had the tuna fish bagel. It was delicious with za'atar all over it. So I don't know. Where else do I eat? There's so many good places.
You gave us plenty of places to think about, Renee.
You're repping Ballard so hard.
Our friend, it's what I do. When I get home, I'm like, I'm not going to drive to wherever. Yasuaki, who's one of the owners of London Plain, just opened Saint Bread, which I've not been to yet. So that's on my list. I've tried and it's been sold out a few times. So I'm like, okay, I know he's probably going to be like, shut up, Renee, you can come anytime. But
yeah, you got to pull your chef card out.
I know, right? Like, I don't want to do that. But yeah, I'm just excited about people making food that makes them happy for a change than trying to make us happy, as guests. I think that will happen if you make food that you love. So.
No, I love stuff like that too. I've been reading Dominique Cren's book. I'm just like, yeah, just cook that beautiful food from Brittany. And like, it reminds you of home. And there's something that's like distinctly sad about like a restaurant that's doing like a filet mignon and like a mushroom sauce. And you're like,
yeah.
Do you even care?
Have you ever been to France? No. Like no one cares. I think that's the thing. I really hope that people just really embrace the idea that culturally like diverse food is so much better than all that same shit that you would get at a hotel or whatever. That became like what was considered food, and it really never was, but nobody thought about it. They just were like, oh, it's what I'm supposed to think is good, so it must be. And now it's just, gloves are off. It's so exciting to see that, I think Seattle's a really great place for it because we have such amazing food already. So yeah. And then all the ingredients and everything. So Misha, I've been in Fremont is really great too. Indian food. Love it. Misha. Yeah. She, there was just a great story about, her and Mel, getting the other woman's name, which is bad, but just talking about like women opening restaurants during the pandemic in Seattle and how badass they are, and proof that like, I think if you do love what you're doing and you're proud of it in a time where people actually hopefully are caring, more than historically, it will make like for the greatest experiences. So yeah, but her food's delicious. It's in Fremont, so I was close to Ballard. So I was driving home and I was like, "Ooh, I'm going to get this food." And we've been back a few times. I haven't eaten in yet, but I've taken it out a lot, and it's delicious. And yeah, I just love all those flavors. It's just so good.
Well, Renee, obviously listeners should go out and buy your book, Getaway, which is beautiful and very delicious. Radhika, you give a thumbs up. I will keep cooking out of this thing. It's
for sure.
Helpful. Is there any way else that listeners, if they dig what you're about, can support you?
Oh man, I mean, I think eating out as much as you can, not even just for me, but like, if you have the ability to do so, like go. Don't bring your gift cards for one. Wait a year on the gift cards if you can. If you can't, then come use them. And yeah, just, be patient. I would say restaurants are, not that I want to like give excuses for things, but it's just everything's like so much harder during, trying to serve people and be safe and all of that. So, I mean, I think now we're hopefully like through the worst part of it, but it has not been an easy year for anyone that's worked out in the world, especially in hospitality. So just come and have fun and eat lots, drink white wine.
God, you hate red wine, or you just think it's...
No, I really don't like red wine. I just think it's funny. I mean, I think in the 25 years of doing this, like I think originally I would have just been like, lots of eye rolls for people that would drink red wine with oysters. And now I'm just like, oh shit, I don't care. Just do what you want. But I still don't think it's a good idea. So, white wine and rosé, so much better with food.
Be quite overpowering. I don't know people have a sophisticated palate to know.
Time and a place for sure. I mean, I do love some red wine, but not at the beginning of my meal. That's for sure. Yeah. I don't know. Just happy that people still want to come out to eat. So that feels good.
We can speculate wildly on that mystery another time, I think. But in the meantime, thanks for being with us, Renee. That was super fun.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Yeah. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, please rate and review it in Apple Podcasts and/or Stitcher. It really helps us a lot to get this content to a wider audience. If you think what we're doing is useful, interesting, fun, hopefully all three, we'd certainly appreciate your rating and review. You can keep up with Nori at nori.com, where there is a newsletter. That's nori.com/subscribe. There's podcasts. There's a whole bunch else. Or you can send us an email at podcast@nori.com. We are also now on Patreon at patreon.com/noripodcasts if you'd like more content, engagement, and community. And thank you so much for your support.